Let me break it down for you, Mark.
Boom! I'm really like that. And your best work is a light pack. Nigga, Prince outlived Mike Jack. Nigga, boom!
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Josh, not with a retro redux today. Instead, we're doing a review of Invincible Season 2. Now, let's just get straight into it. I gotta say, off the bat, Prime, you fumbled this, bro. You really did. First of all, the release plan for this show was really bad. It nearly killed the momentum of it for me, and it was honestly pointless. Also, you introduced ads to your service. That is terrible. I'm tired of these streaming services with their ads and their new rules. It's getting really bad. I'm finna turn into Patchy if y'all streaming services keep playing with us. Alright, I'm all for waiting for the show to just be fully animated and, you know, edited and voice acted and all that. If that meant that this season would have had to have come out maybe this summer, I'm all for that, as opposed to that long break in the middle. Especially also because I wasn't really a huge fan of the first half of this season. The pacing of it felt rushed in terms of, you know, the story, where it was going, and the reveals. Like Mark meets up with his dad and stuff like that. Like just a ton of things that I just felt like maybe have him meeting his dad be the season's, like the season 2 part 1 finale and leading into part 2 or something. However, when we talk about Mark, I think Mark's arc, LMAO, is actually, you know, still great and obviously still the foundation of the show. And him being in a tough spot, dealing with his father's betrayal and all the after effects and how everything from that moment is affected all his relationships, his school life, you know, his mental, everything is affected from that moment. And you see the consequences spread out throughout all his relationships in the show. And I really enjoyed it. I think Invincible having the pressure to prove his innocence to Cecil and the Guardians, and, you know, even him questioning his future, considering his lifetime during the conversation he has with his mom near the end of the show, I just think are all very engaging, introspective storylines for this main character, and I'm very excited to see where they go. But yeah, man, Steven Yeun is still great as Mark, but goddamn, can my boy Invincible lose a fight? Omni-Man returns, and to be quite honest with you, I wasn't really a big fan of it. I'm also not really a fan of this self-questioning arc that he's currently on, and to be honest, it's just not for me. I think the reveal of him on another planet with a new family was pretty cool, how, you know, considering just how callous it seems, how quickly he's moved on, but things are kind of explained with the whole biology of that species on that planet. But yeah, I don't know, the whole Viltrumite storyline seems to be very interesting and cool, but Omni-Man's place in it all has caused the character itself to lose a little bit of its own like luster and intrigue, but of course we have to see where the story goes from here, and J.K. Simmons is still doing a great job. I think the aspect or the portrayal of Omni-Man in this show also leads to my grander criticism of the season, which is the first season itself was a solid show, a really good show that is bolstered by its tension, its voice acting, and emotional beats, and the epicenter of that season is the underlying role of the Omni-Man character. The twist, the build-up, and eventual reveal to the characters were so entertaining to me, but the lack of a central conflict, that nuance, made certain portions of this season feel generic. Even the aspect of Invincible, dealing with the other Viltrumites on the planet for the first time and eventually Viltrumites coming to Earth, just really didn't have the punch that I needed it to have. Sometimes it just felt like, you know, your average superhero cartoon as opposed to the mature adult animation superhero show that it was amongst more mature contemporaries like it, like the season 5 of Samurai Jack. The multiverse stuff that they include here is cool. I really appreciate the world building in this show. You know, there's so many planets and different species, even on Earth, like the Atlanteans and stuff like that show up in this season. I think it's all pretty cool. The multiverse stuff is handled cool for the most part here. It's never like heavy-handed like how it's presented in so many other pieces of media, especially in the past 2 years. It's not cliche. I mean, it's cliche, but it never overstays its welcome. And I love the appearances of Totally Not Spider-Man and Man from the Batman Arkham subreddit. I think the comedic timing of that entire finale was really great, especially because it's immediately contrasted with potentially another incredibly dark and morbid moment in Mark's life, quite possibly just as morbid as what happened in Chicago last season. Or actually, I take that back. That's still pretty fucked up. That feeling, that criticism is immediately counterbalanced also by the presentation of the side characters. all of which who have like engaging plot lines and conflicts, especially compared to the first season, whereas I only found myself truly caring about the Omni-Man and Mark plots in the show in the first season were truly like my main priority. Here, I actually really enjoyed the stories of the side characters. Like, in all honesty, if you're gonna make a show with a ton of characters like this, you have to follow this show's blueprint by just having a bunch of stories filled with so much depth and develop all of your side characters in a way that's super intriguing, especially in a show where you consider the power scaling to be flying nuke level characters like Omni-Man and then just normal human people like Debbie. And speaking of Debbie, I think Debbie's arc is probably the best in the entire show. What she goes through in the first half of the season, the crisis that she suffers, and her having to cope with the revelation of her husband and all the things she thought about him being wrong, especially all of the hurtful things that she heard him say. This aspect of her character is so appreciated, and you feel for her the entire time. When she finally gets, you know, some semblance of closure, figuring out where he is and then having to raise his son again, you just love this character. Her relationship with Mark and the way it's developed is just so heartwarming and honestly reminds me of me and my mom. Amber, the girlfriend of Mark, returns, and honestly the quality in terms of writing when it comes to their relationship and the character herself is relatively amended in comparison to the first season to me. She's a much better character this go around, and the saga around their relationship, considering Mark's life and the obstacles that he faces, was completely engaging as opposed to the frivolous conflicts that they would have in the first season that were just kind of boring and repetitive. Rexplode actually gets some super cool character development this season, especially in the second half. Donald also has a super interesting arc that he goes through in this season that I really wasn't expecting. And there are other side characters that I didn't expect to get a ton of screen time or engaging moments, but honestly, Immortal, Duplicate, and even William and his boyfriend in college all have these great character moments that develop these characters and their place in this world. Oh yeah, and Alan the Alien is still the best character.
Alright, we should be good now.
You know, on my planet, a sock on the door means somebody's fucking.
Yeah, it's the same here.
Some characters this season, however, do get the shaft in terms of presentation and screen time and overall writing. The Mauler twins, who were also some of my favorite characters from the first season, don't really get much to do here. In fact, they completely disappear in the second half of the season, so that was incredibly disappointing. Cecil isn't really given much here. He is presented slightly more desperate, which is engaging considering how, you know, calm and sure of himself he seemed in the first season, which is interesting, I guess, but he isn't really given much to work with here either. The Guardians are just there. In all honesty, like, Robot and Monster Girl's relationship is still weird to me and is probably the least engaging part of the entire show for me. It's been that way since the first season, and it continued to be that way for this season. And I think, honestly, the biggest crime against all of its supporting characters is placed upon Adam Eve's lap. Adam Eve, I guess the special that she got last summer was supposed to future-proof the severe lack of Eve in this season, especially part 2, but she isn't given much of anything this go around. It's actually kind of head scratching considering how good of a character she is and what we've seen her in thus far. Like, her own special and in season 1, she was one of the better characters, but this go around, she just doesn't get much to do. Let's talk about Angstrom Levy. Now, there are other villains, you know, like I previously mentioned, the Viltrumites, and a couple of the weekly villains, like the alien that they dealt with on Mars and shit like that. But overall, it seems like Angstrom Levy is the main antagonist of this season. I gotta say, I didn't like this guy. Sterling K. Brown is a phenomenal actor and a proven voice actor. Like, damn, he does a great job. But unfortunately, this character was just weak to me. And I don't mean weak in terms of power scaling. I mean, the character does some evil and hardcore shit in this story, like breaking Debbie's arm. But unfortunately, I just found myself bored with his multiverse powers and the explanation scene at the beginning of the season and his overall plan. So that when he was mutated, I barely felt anything for the character. And I just saw him as nothing more but an obstacle for Invincible, but not in a way where I felt endeared to this character at all or like I was going to remember him. Especially considering how he's built up and sprinkled throughout the the entire season, you would imagine like I don't know, I guess the presentation of the character in his final conflict would have been a bit more dramatic, a bit more effective somehow. I don't want to like write a fan fiction of how I would have written this character or anything. I couldn't think of it myself, but at least in terms of its presentation here, I don't think the character is given enough screen time or enough evil acts for him to truly affect me at all emotionally. So yeah, sorry dude. The animation is still not that interesting to me either, especially after seeing the teaser that they did last year or a year and a half ago. Now in retrospect, it feels more like a Cartoon Network ad that they used to show from my childhood. Gore and blood combined with the sound design are definitely the most effective parts in terms of the technical aspect of this show. The fights and all of the punches, the hits, bones breaking, all are super effective and sound incredibly painful. I also think their reaction to the animation critiques at the Comic-Con scene is actually really funny. Overall, it's still a really well written show with complex characters and an insane level of violence that never truly feels unearned. But unfortunately, since it lacks such an interesting nucleic story arc compared to season 1's with Omni-Man, it does go down a peg for me. So instead of it being an 8.5 like last season, I'm gonna give this season a 7.5. It's still a fun watch, it's still pretty great. Now, what did you think of Invincible season 2? Are you playing Fortnite right now, dancing to the popular emote as Invincible or Omni-Man or Adam Eve? Let me know, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye bye.